The box arrived at noon on a Tuesday, sitting on my front porch like a ticking bomb wrapped in brown paper. I'd been under the hood of my '98 Mustang in the garage, cursing at a stubborn alternator bolt, when I heard the delivery truck rumble away down Maple Street. Cedar Falls, Ohio wasn't exactly a hotbed of surprise deliveries. Most folks around here ordered their groceries online and called it excitement. I wiped my hands on a greasy rag and walked to the front door, squinting against the autumn sun. The package was sleek, expensive-looking, with my name printed in block letters, Hale Trenwick. No return address, just a corporate courier label with a tracking number that meant nothing to me. Inside my cluttered living room, I set the box on the coffee table and grabbed a utility knife from my toolbox. The tape peeled away clean, revealing white tissue paper wrapped around something long and cylindrical. My first thought was a bottle of wine. Maybe Lana had ordered something special for our anniversary next month. We'd been married 8 years, and she still surprised me sometimes. But it wasn't wine. I pulled out a cucumber. Not just any cucumber. This thing was massive, easily 12 inches long and thick as my wrist. Fresh, firm, still cold from refrigeration. Attached to it with a rubber band was a folded piece of paper. Corporate letterhead, expensive stock. The kind of paper Lana's company used for important documents. The note was typed, not handwritten. Hope this keeps you company while I'm away at the conference. V. Victor Hale, my wife's boss. I sat there for a long moment, staring at this ridiculous vegetable in my living room, trying to process what I was looking at. Victor Hale was Lana's direct supervisor at Morrison Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm downtown. He was 42, married, drove a BMW, and wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. He was also, apparently, sending produce to my house with suggestive notes. The courier label caught my eye. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything. The box, the cucumber, the note, the shipping information. Then I walked to my front door and checked the security camera I'd installed last year after someone had been stealing packages in the neighborhood. The footage was crystal clear. A man in an expensive overcoat walking up to my door at 11:47 a.m., setting down the package and walking back to a silver BMW parked across the street. Victor Hale, not a courier. He'd delivered this personally. I rewound the footage and watched it again. There he was, bold as brass, walking up to my front door like he owned the place. The timestamp showed he'd lingered for almost 30 seconds, probably making sure the package was positioned just right. He'd even looked directly at the camera and smiled, a smug, self-satisfied grin that made my stomach turn. My phone buzzed, a text from Lana. Working late again, don't wait up. Conference prep is crazy. Conference prep. Right. I walked back to the coffee table and picked up the cucumber again, turning it over in my hands. It was perfect. No blemishes, no soft spots. The kind of cucumber you'd find in an upscale grocery store, not the local Kroger where Lana and I usually shopped. This had been selected carefully, purchased with intention. The note bothered me more than the vegetable itself. The casual tone, the assumption of intimacy. Hope this keeps you company. Like Victor knew Lana wouldn't be home, like he knew exactly where she'd be instead. I sat down in my recliner and really looked at my living room for the first time in months. When had everything become so ordinary? The furniture was decent but worn, purchased piece by piece from discount stores over the years. The carpet needed replacing, the walls needed paint. Everything about this place screamed middle class, blue collar, getting by. Lana had been climbing the corporate ladder at Morrison Associates for 3 years now. She'd started as a junior analyst and worked her way up to senior consultant. The money was good, better than my IT technician salary at the community college. She'd been talking about moving to a bigger house, maybe something in the suburbs with a 2-car garage and a real kitchen. I'd thought we were building something together. Apparently she had other ideas. My phone rang. Maddie, my younger sister. "Hey, stranger," she said. "You sound weird. What's wrong?" Maddie tended bar at O'Malley's downtown and had a sixth sense for trouble. She was 28, single, and had never trusted Lana. "Too polished," she'd said after meeting her. Like she's always performing for an audience. "Nothing's wrong," I said, still staring at the cucumber. "Just had an interesting delivery." "What kind of delivery?" I told her. Everything. The package, the note, the security footage. Maddie listened without interrupting, which meant she was taking this seriously. "That's messed up, Hale," she said finally. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. You could confront her directly. Ask her what's going on. And give her a chance to lie? To come up with some explanation that makes me look paranoid? So what's the alternative?" I looked at the cucumber again, then at the note. "I'm going to wait. See what she says when she gets home. See if she mentions anything about Victor or the conference or why someone might be sending vegetables to our house. And if she doesn't, then I'll know for sure. We talked for a few more minutes, but my mind was already working, planning. I hung up and went back to the garage, but I couldn't concentrate on the Mustang. Instead, I found myself thinking about the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. Lana had been working late more often. She'd bought new clothes, expensive clothes that she claimed were necessary for client meetings. She'd started going to the gym, something she'd never shown interest in before. She'd been distant during our conversations, always checking her phone, always distracted. I'd attributed it to work stress. Morrison Associates was a demanding place, and Lana was ambitious. She wanted to make partners someday, and that required sacrifice. I'd been supportive, understanding. I'd picked up the slack at home, doing more of the cooking and cleaning so she could focus on her career. What an idiot I'd been. At 5 o'clock, I went inside and made dinner, spaghetti with meat sauce, nothing fancy. I set 2 places at the kitchen table and waited. 6 o'clock came and went, then 7. At 8:30, I got another text. Really sorry, running super late. Grab dinner without me. Love you. Love you. Right. I ate alone, cleaned up, and went back to the living room. The cucumber was still there, mocking me from the coffee table. I picked up the note and read it again. The paper was expensive, but the message was printed on a standard office printer. The kind of printer they had at Morrison Associates. The kind of printer that would have digital logs showing when and what was printed. An idea started forming. I spent the next hour researching Morrison Associates online. Their website listed Victor Hale as a senior partner specializing in corporate restructuring. His bio mentioned his MBA from Northwestern, his 15 years of experience, his commitment to client service. There was a professional headshot showing a man with graying temples and an expensive smile. No mention of his wife, but a quick search of social media found her. Patricia Hale, 40, worked part-time at an art gallery, active in local charity organizations. Her Instagram was full of pictures from country club events, wine tastings, and vacation trips to places I couldn't afford to visit. She deserved to know what her husband was doing. At 11 o'clock, Lana's car pulled into the driveway. I heard her key in the lock, heard her heels clicking across the hardwood floor of the entryway. "Hale," she called, "you still up?" "In here," I said from the living room. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing her work clothes, a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my car payment. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional bun, and her makeup was perfect despite the long day. She looked beautiful, successful, confident. She looked like a stranger. "Sorry I'm so late," she said, dropping her purse on the side table. "This conference is going to be huge for the firm. Victor's really counting on—" She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes had found the cucumber on the coffee table. "What's that?" she asked, and I heard something in her voice. Not confusion, recognition. "You tell me," I said. "It was delivered here today, along with this." I held up the note. Lana's face went pale, then flushed red. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't understand," she said finally. "Who would send something like that?" "The delivery receipt says Victor Hale, your boss. The security camera confirms it. He brought it himself." Lana sat down hard on the couch across from me. For a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. Then something shifted in her expression, and I saw her putting on her professional mask, the one she wore for difficult client meetings. "There has to be an explanation," she said. "Maybe it's some kind of joke. You know how the office can be sometimes." "What kind of joke involves sending vegetables to an employee's house?" "I don't know, but—" "With a note that says, 'Hope this keeps you company while I'm away'?" Lana's composure cracked slightly. "Hale, I swear to you, I have no idea why Victor would send something like that. Maybe he meant to send it somewhere else. Maybe it's for his wife, and he got the addresses mixed up." It was a weak explanation, and we both knew it. But I could see her mind working, trying to construct a narrative that would get her out of this situation. "Where were you tonight?" I asked. "At the office, working on conference prep with the team." "Until 11 p.m.? "Yes. You can call and check if you want. The security logs will show when I left." She was probably telling the truth about that, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The cucumber and note had revealed something that couldn't be taken back. "I think you should stay somewhere else tonight," I said quietly. Lana's eyes widened. "What? Hale, you can't be serious. Over a stupid vegetable?" "It's not about the vegetable. It's about what it represents." "Which is what, exactly?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet street. Mrs. Krolik from next door was walking her ancient poodle, probably hoping to catch some gossip. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and everything looked normal, peaceful, ordinary, but nothing would ever be ordinary again. It represents the fact that your boss feels comfortable sending intimate gifts to my house, I said, without turning around. It represents the fact that he knows you well enough to make jokes about keeping you company. It represents the fact that you've been lying to me. I haven't been lying. Every late night, every business dinner, every conference and client meeting and weekend workshop, how many of them were real, Lana? How many of them were just excuses to spend time with Victor? She was quiet for a long moment. When I turned around, she was staring at the cucumber with an expression I couldn't read. You're being paranoid, she said finally. You're taking one weird incident and building this whole conspiracy theory around it. Am I? Yes. And it's not fair. I've worked hard to get where I am at Morrison Associates. I've sacrificed a lot for my career, and now you're trying to turn it into something dirty. The righteous indignation in her voice was almost convincing. Almost. But I'd seen the recognition in her eyes when she first spotted the cucumber. I'd heard the catch in her voice when she said Victor's name. Pack a bag, I said. Stay at your sister's or get a hotel room. I don't care. But I need some time to think, and I can't do that with you here. Lana stood up, smoothing down her skirt. Fine, if that's what you want. But you're making a mistake, Hale. You're throwing away 8 years of marriage over nothing. She walked upstairs, and I heard her moving around in the bedroom, opening drawers, zipping luggage. 20 minutes later, she came back down with an overnight bag slung over her shoulder. I'll call you tomorrow, she said, when you've had time to calm down and think rationally. She left without saying goodbye, and I heard her car backing out of the driveway. Then the house was quiet again, just me and the cucumber and the note that had changed everything. I picked up my phone and started typing an email. Anonymous account, untraceable. The subject line read, information about your husband. I attached the photos of the cucumber, the note, and the security footage showing Victor making the delivery. Then I typed Patricia Hale's email address and hit send. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my garage with a beer and a laptop, documenting everything. Screenshots of the security footage, photos of the package and note from multiple angles, copies of the courier receipt. I created a timeline of Lana's recent behavior, the late nights, the new clothes, the mysterious phone calls she'd started taking in the bathroom. At 6 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Lana. Stayed at Jennifer's. Need to talk when you're ready to be reasonable. Jennifer was Lana's older sister, a divorce attorney who'd never liked me. She'd probably spend the morning filling Lana's head with legal strategies and victim narratives. I deleted the message without responding. Instead, I called in sick to work and drove downtown to Morrison Associates. The building was a gleaming glass tower in the business district, the kind of place where people wore expensive suits and made important decisions. I parked across the street and waited. At 7:30, Victor's BMW pulled into the executive parking garage. At 8:15, Lana's Honda appeared. She looked tired, stressed, but she walked into that building with her head held high, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just been caught in whatever this was. My phone rang. Maddie. How'd it go last night? She asked. I told her about the confrontation, about Lana's denials, about the email I'd sent to Victor's wife. Maddie listened without judgment, one of the things I'd always appreciated about my sister. So, what's the plan now? She asked. I'm not sure yet, but I'm not going to just roll over and pretend this didn't happen. Good. You deserve better than this. Do I? Maybe I've been a lousy husband. Maybe I drove her to this. Stop that. Whatever's going on between Lana and her boss, it's not your fault. You don't send cucumbers to someone's house unless there's already something inappropriate happening. She was right, but it didn't make me feel better. I sat in my car for another hour, watching people go in and out of the Morrison Associates building. Young professionals with briefcases and coffee cups, all of them climbing their own ladders, chasing their own dreams. At 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with an email notification. Patricia Hale had responded to my anonymous message. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I would like to discuss this matter further. Please call me at your earliest convenience. She'd included her phone number. I drove to a coffee shop 3 blocks away and called from the parking lot. Patricia answered on the second ring. This is Patricia. You responded to my email about your husband. Yes. Her voice was calm, controlled. I appreciate you reaching out. This situation explains some things that have been troubling me lately. What kind of things? Victor's been working late more often. He's been secretive about his phone. Last week I found a receipt from an upscale grocery store in his car. He claimed he'd bought lunch there, but the receipt showed produce purchases, including a cucumber. The pieces were falling into place. Victor hadn't just sent one cucumber to my house. He'd been planning this, shopping for it, probably laughing about it with Lana. "What do you want to do about this?" I asked. "I want proof. Real proof. Not just suspicions and circumstantial evidence. If Victor is having an affair, I need documentation for divorce proceedings." Patricia Hale wasn't just angry. She was strategic. I could respect that. "I might be able to help with that," I said, "but I need something from you first." "What?" "Access to Victor's calendar, his travel schedule. Anything that might help me figure out when and where they're meeting." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Victor keeps his work calendar synced to our home computer. I could send you screenshots." "That would be helpful." "There's something else," she said. "The conference Victor mentioned in his note. It's not until next month. If he's telling people he's away at a conference, he's lying about where he is." After we hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced since opening that package yesterday, a sense of purpose. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was gathering intelligence, building a case, preparing for war. I drove home and spent the afternoon organizing my evidence, photos, timestamps, email records, phone logs, everything documented and cross-referenced. If this was going to get ugly, and it was, I wanted to be prepared. At 4 o'clock, Patricia sent me screenshots of Victor's calendar. Tomorrow he had a client dinner scheduled from 7 to 10 p.m. No location specified, no client name listed, just client dinner in the generic appointment slot. I texted Lana, "Are you working late tomorrow?" Her response came back quickly. "Yes, big client presentation to prep for." Interesting. Victor had a mysterious client dinner, and Lana had a mysterious client presentation. What were the odds they were unrelated? And I spent the evening researching private investigators, divorce attorneys, and surveillance equipment. I wasn't ready to hire professionals yet, but I wanted to know my options. The internet was full of advice for suspicious spouses, some of it helpful, most of it vindictive and stupid. The smart play was to document everything, avoid confrontation, and let them hang themselves. The emotional play was to burst into whatever restaurant or hotel they were meeting at tomorrow night and cause a scene. I was leaning toward the smart play, but the emotional play had its appeal. At 11 p.m., I got a text from Lana. "Can I come home? I want to talk." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Not yet. I need more time." "How much time?" "I don't know." The next day, I called in sick again and spent the morning setting up surveillance. I'd ordered a small GPS tracker online with overnight shipping, the kind paranoid parents use to monitor their teenagers. It was magnetic, weatherproof, and had a 2-week battery life. At lunchtime, I drove to Morrison Associates and waited for Victor to leave the building. He emerged at 12:30, walking to a nearby deli with 2 other men in suits. While he was gone, I slipped into the parking garage and attached the tracker to the undercarriage of his BMW. Then I went home and waited. At 6:30, the tracker showed Victor's car leaving downtown. Instead of heading toward his house in the suburbs, he drove to the Riverside Hotel, an upscale place near the river with a restaurant, bar, and rooms that rented by the night. 20 minutes later, Lana's car appeared at the same location. I sat in my living room, watching the GPS dots on my laptop screen, feeling something cold and hard settle in my stomach. There it was, proof. Not just suspicion or paranoia, but actual evidence of what I'd known since yesterday. My wife was having an affair with her boss. I could have driven to the hotel, I could have confronted them in the restaurant, made a scene, demanded explanations, but that would have been reactive, emotional. Instead, I took screenshots of the GPS data, noted the timestamps, and added everything to my growing file. At 10:15, both cars left the hotel. Lana's headed toward her sister's house. Victor's went home to Patricia. My phone buzzed with a text from Lana. "Working really late tonight. Presentation is tomorrow. Don't wait up." I screenshotted that too. The next morning, I called Patricia Hale. "They met at the Riverside Hotel last night," I told her. 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., I have GPS evidence. Patricia was quiet for a moment. "That's where Victor proposed to me," she said finally. 15 years ago. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Victor wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was doing it in a place that held sentimental value for their marriage. "I'm going to confront him tonight," Patricia said, "when he gets home from work. I want you to be there." "Why?" "Because I want him to see that his secret isn't secret anymore. I want him to know that people are watching, documenting, preparing. I want him to understand that this isn't going to end quietly." I thought about it. Showing up at Victor's house would be crossing a line, moving from passive surveillance to active confrontation, but maybe it was time to cross that line. "What time?" I asked. 6 o'clock. He usually gets home around 5:30. Victor and Patricia lived in Westfield Estates, a gated community where the houses had 3-car garages and circular driveways. I felt underdressed in my jeans and work shirt, but I wasn't there to impress anyone. Patricia met me at the gate and drove me to her house, a sprawling colonial with manicured landscaping and expensive cars in the driveway. Inside, everything was perfect. Marble countertops, hardwood floors, furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Victor should be home any minute," Patricia said. She seemed calm, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands shook slightly when she poured herself a glass of wine. At 5:40, we heard the BMW in the driveway. Patricia positioned herself in the kitchen, and I stood in the living room where I'd be visible from the entryway. Victor walked through the front door with his briefcase and suit jacket, looking like any other successful businessman coming home from a productive day. He called out a greeting to Patricia, then stopped cold when he saw me standing in his living room. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" he asked. Before I could answer, Patricia appeared from the kitchen. She was holding the cucumber, the same one that had been delivered to my house 2 days ago. I'd given it to her that afternoon. "I think this belongs to you," she said, setting it on the marble countertop with a sharp click. Victor's face went white, then red, then white again. He looked at the cucumber, at me, at his wife, trying to process what was happening. "Patricia, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you sent this to another man's house? Can you explain why you've been meeting his wife at the Riverside Hotel? Can you explain why you've been lying to me for months?" Victor's composure cracked. The confident executive disappeared, replaced by a man who'd been caught in something ugly and indefensible. "It's not what you think," he said weakly. "What I think," Patricia said, "is that you've been having an affair with one of your employees. What I think is that you've been using our marriage as a cover while you play house with some ambitious consultant who's young enough to be flattered by your attention." "Patricia, please." "What I think," she continued, "is that you're a pathetic middle-aged man who threw away 15 years of marriage for someone who probably sees you as nothing more than a career advancement opportunity." The words hit Victor like physical blows. He sagged against the doorframe, all the fight going out of him. "How long?" Patricia asked. Victor looked at the floor. 3 months. 3 months. Patricia laughed, but there was no humor in it. 3 months of lies. 3 months of coming home to me after being with her. 3 months of pretending to be a loving husband while you were planning cute little vegetable deliveries. I felt like I should say something, but this was Patricia's moment. She'd earned the right to destroy him with words. "I want you out," she said finally. "Tonight. Take whatever you can carry and find somewhere else to sleep. My lawyer will be in touch about divorce proceedings." Victor looked up at her, then at me. "This is your fault," he said. "You couldn't just mind your own business." "My business became your business when you started sending packages to my house," I replied. "When you started sleeping with my wife." Lana came on to me. She initiated everything. It was a weak attempt to shift blame, and everyone in the room knew it. But the words still stung. Had Lana really been the aggressor? Had she pursued Victor, or had he pursued her? "Get out," Patricia said, "before I call the police and have you removed." Victor grabbed his briefcase and walked toward the stairs, probably to pack a bag. Patricia and I stood in the kitchen, not speaking, listening to him move around upstairs. "Thank you," she said finally, "for bringing this to my attention, for helping me end this." "What happens now?" "Now, I take him for everything he's worth. The house, the cars, his retirement accounts. I've been a loyal wife for 15 years, and that loyalty is worth something in divorce court." Victor came back downstairs with a suitcase and a garment bag. He avoided eye contact with both of us as he headed for the door. "Victor," Patricia called after him. He stopped and turned around. "The cucumber was a nice touch," she said. "Really showed your maturity level." He left without responding, and we heard the BMW backing out of the driveway. "What about Lana?" Patricia asked. "What are you going to do about her?" I'd been thinking about that question for 2 days. The easy answer was divorce. Hire a lawyer, split the assets, move on with my life. The complicated answer was that I still loved her, despite everything. 8 years of marriage didn't disappear overnight, even when it ended with cucumbers and hotel meetings. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Well, whatever you decide, you should know that Victor won't be a factor much longer. I'm going to make sure he loses his job along with his marriage." "How?" Patricia smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked genuinely happy. Morrison Associates has very strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates, especially when those relationships involve married employees. The partners take a dim view of that kind of liability. She was right. Even if Victor and Lana's affair had been consensual, it violated company policy. Victor had abused his position of authority, created a hostile work environment, and exposed the firm to potential lawsuits. The partners would have to act. I drove home feeling something between satisfaction and emptiness. Victor's life was falling apart, and he deserved it. But destroying him didn't fix my marriage or erase what Lana had done. It just created more wreckage. At 10 o'clock, Lana called. "I heard about Victor," she said without preamble. "His wife threw him out. The whole office is talking about it." "Is that so?" "Hale, we need to talk. Really talk. Not like the other night when you were angry and paranoid." "I wasn't paranoid. I was right." Lana was quiet for a moment. "Can I come home, please? I'll explain everything." I looked around my empty house, the same house where I'd opened that package 3 days ago, where everything had started to unravel. Part of me wanted to say yes, to let her come home and try to rebuild whatever we'd had. Part of me wanted to hear her explanation, to understand how we'd gotten to this point. But the larger part of me knew that some things couldn't be explained away. Some betrayals were too deep to forgive. "Not yet," I said. "I'm not ready." "When will you be ready?" "I don't know." "Hale, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, figure out what went wrong, fix it." "What went wrong is that you've been sleeping with your boss for 3 months. What went wrong is that he felt comfortable sending vegetables to my house. What went wrong is that you lied to me every single day." I know I messed up. But it's over now. Victor and I, it's finished. It was never serious anyway. Never serious. 3 months of lies and hotel meetings and intimate gifts, but it was never serious. I wondered if she actually believed that, or if it was just something she was telling herself to minimize the damage. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said, and hung up. But I wouldn't call her tomorrow. Tomorrow, I had other plans. The next morning, I drove to Morrison Associates and parked across the street again. This time, I wasn't there to spy. I was there to deliver a message. I'd spent the previous evening researching the firm's organizational structure, employee handbook, and ethics policies. Morrison Associates prided itself on professionalism, integrity, and client service. Romantic relationships between supervisors and subordinates were explicitly prohibited. Violation of this policy was grounds for immediate termination. At 9 a.m., I walked into the building's gleaming lobby and took the elevator to the 15th floor. The Morrison Associates reception area was all glass and chrome, with expensive furniture and abstract art on the walls. A young woman behind a curved desk looked up as I approached. "I'd like to speak with someone in human resources," I said, "about a policy violation." She made a phone call, and 5 minutes later, a middle-aged woman in a navy suit appeared. "I'm Janice Kellerman, HR Director. How can I help you?" "I need to report an inappropriate relationship between a supervisor and subordinate. I have documentation." Janice's expression became carefully neutral. "Please come with me." She led me to a conference room and closed the door. I spread my evidence across the polished table, photos of the cucumber and note, screenshots of the security footage showing Victor making the delivery, GPS data from their hotel meeting, timestamps of Lana's lies about working late. Janice examined everything methodically, taking notes on a legal pad. She was professional, thorough, and gave no indication of what she was thinking. "This is quite comprehensive," she said finally. "May I ask how you obtained some of this information?" The security footage is from my own property. The GPS data is from a tracker I placed on Victor Hale's vehicle, which may have been legally questionable, but it's not admissible in court anyway. The photos are of items delivered to my house." "And your relationship to the employees in question?" "Lana Trenwick is my wife. Victor Hale is her supervisor." Janice nodded and made another note. "I'll need to conduct a full investigation before taking any action. This will involve interviews with both employees, review of company communications, and consultation with our legal department." "How long will that take?" "Several days, possibly a week. In the meantime, I'll need to ask you not to discuss this matter with anyone else." "What about Victor's wife? She's already aware of the situation." "That's outside our jurisdiction, but please don't share any additional information until our investigation is complete." I left the building feeling like I'd lit a fuse on a bomb. Corporate investigations moved slowly, but they were thorough. Victor and Lana would be questioned, their computers searched, their phone records subpoenaed. Even if they'd been careful, 3 months of an affair left digital footprints. That afternoon, I finally went back to work. My supervisor, Dave, was understanding about my sudden illness. I'd been a reliable employee for 6 years, and everyone was entitled to a few personal days. "Everything okay at home?" he asked. "Getting there," I said. I spent the day catching up on help desk tickets and system updates, trying to focus on normal problems with normal solutions. It was almost therapeutic. Password resets and printer configurations were simple compared to marital betrayal and corporate investigations. At 5 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Lana. "Victor got called into HR today. They asked him about us. What did you do?" I didn't respond. Another text an hour later. "I got called in too. They have photos, Hale. They have evidence. You're destroying both our careers over nothing." "Over nothing." "Right." At 8 p.m., my phone rang. Lana. "Answer the phone," she said in a voicemail. "We need to talk about this. You're taking things too far." I deleted the message without listening to the rest. The next morning, Janice Kellerman called me. "We've completed our preliminary investigation," she said. "Both employees have admitted to an inappropriate relationship. Mr. Hale has been terminated effective immediately. Ms. Trenwick has been placed on administrative leave pending further review." What does that mean for Lana? It means her employment status is under evaluation. The final decision will depend on several factors: the duration of the relationship, whether company resources were used, whether other employees were affected. And if she's terminated, then she'll be terminated. Mr. Trenwick, I want you to know that Morrison Associates takes these matters very seriously. We appreciate you bringing this to our attention. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and trying to process what I'd just heard. Victor was finished, fired from a senior partnership, facing divorce proceedings, his reputation in ruins. Lana was hanging by a thread, waiting to see if her career would survive her personal choices. Part of me felt satisfied. They'd made their choices, and now they were facing consequences. But part of me felt empty. Destroying their careers didn't fix my marriage or erase the betrayal. It just created more wreckage. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. "This is Victor Hale," the voice said. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do." "You've ruined my life. You've destroyed my career, my marriage, everything I've worked for. Over what? A stupid joke?" "A joke? You sent a cucumber to my house with a note about keeping my wife company. You've been sleeping with her for 3 months. What part of that was a joke?" "It wasn't supposed to go this far. It was supposed to be fun, exciting. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone." The self-pity in his voice was nauseating. "You're 42 years old, Victor. You're married. You were her supervisor. What did you think was going to happen?" "I thought we could keep it private. I thought we were being careful." "You thought wrong. Lana's going to lose her job because of you. She worked hard to get where she is. She doesn't deserve to have her career destroyed." "She doesn't deserve it? What about your wife? What about me? Did we deserve to be lied to and betrayed?" Victor was quiet for a moment. "What do you want? Money? I can pay you to make this go away." "It's too late for that. You should have thought about consequences before you started sending vegetables to my house. You're going to regret this, both of you. Lana will never forgive you for destroying her career." "Maybe not, but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror." I hung up and blocked his number. That evening, Lana showed up at my front door. I'd been expecting her. The confrontation was inevitable. I let her in, and we sat across from each other in the living room where this had all started. She looked terrible. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her clothes wrinkled. The polished professional facade was gone, replaced by someone who looked desperate and defeated. "They're going to fire me," she said without preamble. "Janice called this afternoon. They're terminating my employment for violation of company policy." "I'm sorry to hear that." Are you? Are you really sorry? Because you're the one who made this happen. You're the one who went to HR with your little evidence folder. I'm the one who reported a policy violation. You're the one who violated the policy. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Victor and I, it wasn't serious. It was just something that happened. A mistake. A 3-month mistake. A mistake that involved hotel meetings and intimate gifts and lies to both our spouses. Lana started crying. Not the elegant tears of a movie heroine, but the ugly, messy sobs of someone whose world was falling apart. "I know I messed up," she said. "I know I hurt you. But did you have to destroy everything? Did you have to make sure I lost my job too?" "What did you expect me to do? Pretend it never happened? Go back to our normal life while you continued sneaking around with your boss? I would have ended it. If you just talked to me instead of going nuclear, I would have ended it and we could have worked things out. Would you? Really? Because when I confronted you about the cucumber, you denied everything. You called it a joke, a misunderstanding. You were still lying to me even after you'd been caught. Lana wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I was scared. I didn't know what to say. You could have said the truth. The truth would have ended our marriage. The lies ended our marriage. The truth might have saved it. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Krolik walking her poodle, probably hoping to catch some gossip about the drama unfolding next door. What happens now? Lana asked. I don't know. I guess that depends on what you want. I want to come home. I want to try to fix this. How do we fix this, Lana? How do we get past 3 months of lies? How do I trust you again? Counseling, therapy, time. I don't know, but we have to try. We've been married 8 years, Hale. That has to count for something. It does count for something. That's why this hurts so much. Lana moved to the couch next to me, reaching for my hand. I love you. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you. Victor was a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake, but you're my husband. You're my life. I wanted to believe her. Despite everything, part of me still loved the woman I'd married 8 years ago. But that woman felt like a stranger now, someone I'd thought I knew but had never really understood. I need time, I said. I need space to figure out what I want. How much time? I don't know. More than a few days. Lana's face crumpled. You're going to divorce me, aren't you? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Because of a stupid affair that didn't mean anything? Because of 3 months of lies? Because of hotel meetings and secret phone calls and cucumbers delivered to my house? Because you chose someone else over me, over us? I chose wrong. I admit that. But people make mistakes, Hale. People screw up and learn from it and do better. Some mistakes are too big to learn from. Lana stood up, smoothing down her skirt in a gesture that reminded me of the confident woman she'd been just a week ago. Fine, if that's how you want it. But don't pretend this is all my fault. You gave up on us just as much as I did. How did I give up on us? You never fought for me. When I started working late, when I started dressing differently, when I started pulling away, you just let it happen. You never asked what was wrong, never tried to reconnect. You just assumed everything was fine. The accusation stung because there was truth in it. I had noticed the changes in Lana's behavior, but I'd attributed them to work stress rather than marital problems. I'd been passive, assuming our marriage was solid enough to weather whatever storms came along. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said. No, it doesn't. But it explains why I was vulnerable to someone like Victor. He paid attention to me, Hale. He noticed when I got a haircut or wore a new dress. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answers. So this is my fault for not being attentive enough? It's both our faults. I made the choice to cheat, but you made the choice to check out of our marriage long before that. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been a neglectful husband, too focused on my own routine to notice my wife slipping away. But that didn't change the fundamental fact that she'd chosen to handle our problems by sleeping with someone else. I think you should go, I said. Lana nodded, picking up her purse. I'll be at Jennifer's if you change your mind, if you decide our marriage is worth fighting for. After she left, I sat in my empty house trying to figure out what I felt. Anger, sadness, relief, regret, all of it mixed together in a way that made my chest tight and my head pound. I poured myself a drink and called Maddie. How'd it go? She asked. About like you'd expect. She wants to reconcile. She thinks we can work through this. What do you think? I think some things can't be worked through. I think some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Maybe, but 8 years is a long time to throw away. Is it throwing it away if she's the one who destroyed it? Maddie was quiet for a moment. I don't know, Hale. I've never been married, but I know you loved her, maybe still love her. Love isn't enough. Trust matters too. Respect matters. How do I respect someone who lied to me for 3 months? I don't have an answer for that. Neither did I. But I was starting to realize that maybe there wasn't an answer. Maybe some problems didn't have solutions, just consequences. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a lawyer's office downtown, listening to a middle-aged woman in a power suit explain Ohio's divorce laws. Her name was Rebecca Martinez, and she specialized in what she called high-conflict marital dissolution, which was a fancy way of saying messy divorces. Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, she explained, which means we don't need to prove adultery to get a divorce. But infidelity can still be a factor in asset division and spousal support calculations. What does that mean in practical terms? It means Lana's affair could work in your favor financially, especially since she's now unemployed and you have documentation of her misconduct. I'd brought my evidence folder, the same one I'd shown to Morrison Associates' HR department. Rebecca reviewed everything with the same methodical attention Janice had shown, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. "This is very thorough," she said finally. "Your wife's attorney will have a difficult time disputing these facts." "She's hired an attorney?" "Jennifer Caldwell. She's good. Aggressive, experienced, expensive. She'll probably try to frame this as a marriage that was already failing, with the affair being a symptom rather than a cause." "Is that a viable strategy?" "It can be, if there's evidence of prior marital problems. Has your marriage been troubled for a long time?" I thought about Lana's accusation that I'd checked out of our relationship, that I'd been inattentive and neglectful. There was probably truth in that, but it didn't excuse what she'd done. "We had our issues," I said carefully, "but nothing that justified infidelity." "Good. Stick to that position. Don't let them turn you into the villain in this story." Rebecca outlined the divorce process, filing papers, asset inventory, negotiation, and possibly trial if we couldn't reach a settlement. It would take months, cost thousands of dollars, and probably get ugly before it was over. "Is there any chance of reconciliation?" she asked, "because if there is, you might want to consider counseling before proceeding with divorce." "I don't think so. Too much has happened." "Then let's get started." That afternoon, I drove to my bank and opened a new account in my name only. I transferred half our joint savings, enough to cover my immediate expenses without draining everything. It was a precautionary move Rebecca had recommended, in case Lana tried to empty our accounts out of spite or desperation. While I was there, I also rented a safety deposit box and stored copies of all my evidence. Rebecca had warned me that things might get contentious, and I wanted to make sure my documentation was secure. On my way home, I stopped at O'Malley's to see Maddie. The bar was quiet in the late afternoon, just a few regulars nursing beers and watching sports highlights on the mounted televisions. "You look like someone who's made a decision," Maddie said, pouring me a whiskey without being asked. "Filed for divorce today." "How do you feel about it?" "Relieved, mostly. Like I'm finally moving forward instead of just reacting to things." "Any regrets?" I thought about it while sipping my drink. "Maybe. 8 years is a long time to walk away from, but I can't get past what she did. Every time I think about trying to reconcile, I remember that cucumber and that note, and I can't." "Understandable. Trust is like glass. Once it's broken, it's never quite the same." A familiar voice behind me said, "Well, well, if it isn't the man who destroyed my career." I turned around to see Victor Hale standing near the bar entrance. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled clothes, the smell of alcohol heavy around him. The confident executive was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he'd been sleeping in his car. "Victor," I said calmly, "you're not looking well." Funny how that happens when your life gets destroyed by a vindictive spouse. Maddie stepped closer, her hand moving towards something under the bar, probably a baseball bat or pepper spray. "Is there a problem here?" "No problem," Victor said, swaying slightly. "Just wanted to thank my friend Hale here for ruining everything I've worked for." "You ruined it yourself," I said. "I just documented it." "Documented it? You stalked me. You put a tracking device on my car. You invaded my privacy. I tracked my wife's movements. Your car just happened to be in the same places." Victor laughed bitterly. "Your wife. You want to know something about your precious wife? She came on to me. She initiated everything. She was the one who suggested the hotel meetings. Even if that's true, you were her supervisor. You had the responsibility to shut it down." "Responsibility? She was throwing herself at me and I'm supposed to be a saint? She's beautiful, ambitious, exciting, everything you're not." The insult was designed to provoke me, and part of me wanted to take the bait, but I'd learned something over the past few weeks about the difference between reacting and responding. "You're drunk," I said. "You should go home." "Home? I don't have a home. Patricia threw me out, remember? Thanks to your little evidence presentation." "Patricia threw you out because you cheated on her. That's not my fault." "Everything was fine before you stuck your nose into other people's business. Lana was happy, I was happy, everyone was getting what they needed." "What about your wife? What about me? Were we getting what we needed?" Victor's face darkened. "You got exactly what you deserved. A mediocre life with a mediocre job and a wife who was bored out of her mind." That's when I stood up. Not to fight. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of provoking me into violence, but I wasn't going to sit there and listen to him insult my life either. "You're pathetic," I said quietly. "You threw away a 15-year marriage and a successful career for a 3-month fling with a subordinate. You sent vegetables to my house like a teenage prank caller. And now you're drunk in a bar at 4 in the afternoon, blaming everyone else for your problems. At least I took what I wanted. At least I didn't just sit there and let life pass me by. You didn't take anything, you destroyed everything you touched. Your marriage, your career, my marriage. You're like a tornado. You leave wreckage behind and move on. Victor stepped closer, and I could smell the alcohol on his breath. Maybe I should finish what I started. Maybe I should take everything from you. You already did. But here's the thing, Victor. I'm rebuilding. I'm moving on. You're the one stuck in the wreckage. For a moment, I thought he might take a swing at me. His hands clenched into fists, his face flushed with anger and alcohol. But then something seemed to drain out of him, and his shoulders sagged. You don't understand, he said quietly. You don't understand what it's like to lose everything. You're right. I don't understand what it's like to throw everything away for a cheap thrill. Victor turned and walked out of the bar without another word. Through the window, I watched him stumble to a beat-up sedan, not the BMW he'd been driving a few weeks ago, probably a rental or a loaner while his assets were being divided in divorce proceedings. Friend of yours? Maddie asked dryly. Former boss-in-law, or something like that. Charming guy. Really easy to see why your wife was attracted to him. I finished my drink and left a tip on the bar. I should go. Thanks for having my back. Always. That's what family is for. That evening, I was surprised to get a call from Patricia Hale. I heard about your divorce filing, she said. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing. How did you hear about it? Small legal community. Word gets around, especially when it involves the Morrison Associates scandal. Is that what they're calling it? Among other things. Victor's termination has been the talk of the business district. Apparently, this wasn't his first inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. That was news to me. There were others. According to the gossip, yes. Morrison and Associates conducted a broader investigation after your complaint. They found evidence of at least 2 other questionable relationships over the past few years. Why wasn't he fired before? The other women never complained. They either left the company quietly or were transferred to different departments. Your situation was different because you had documentation and weren't afraid to use it. It was satisfying to know that Victor's pattern of behavior was finally catching up with him, but it also made me wonder how many other marriages he'd damaged over the years. How are your divorce proceedings going? I asked. Smoothly. Victor doesn't have much leverage. The affair is well documented, and I have a good attorney. We should be finalized within a few months. What will you do after that? Travel, maybe. I've been thinking about going back to school, getting a degree in art history. Victor always said it was impractical, but now I don't have to worry about what Victor thinks. There was something liberating in her voice, like she was looking forward to rebuilding her life without the weight of a failed marriage. What about you? She asked. Any plans for after your divorce? I don't know yet. Maybe move somewhere new, start fresh. Cedar Falls has too many memories. That's probably wise. Sometimes you need a complete break from the past. After we hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about fresh starts and new beginnings. The house felt different now, not like a home, but like a temporary shelter. Everything reminded me of Lana. The furniture we'd picked out together, the photos on the walls, the kitchen where we'd cooked dinner and talked about our days. Maybe Patricia was right. Maybe I needed a complete break from the past. The next morning, I called a real estate agent. The divorce was finalized on a gray Tuesday in February, 4 months after a cucumber had arrived at my front door and changed everything. Lana and I sat in a conference room with our attorneys, signing papers that dissolved 8 years of marriage into a stack of legal documents. She looked different, thinner, more fragile, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She'd found a new job at a smaller consulting firm, but the pay was significantly less than what she'd made at Morrison and Associates. The scandal had followed her, limiting her options in Cedar Falls' tight professional community. We didn't speak during the proceedings except to answer direct questions from the lawyers. There was nothing left to say. We'd covered everything in months of negotiations, mediation sessions, and bitter phone calls through our attorneys. The asset division was relatively straightforward. We'd never accumulated much wealth. The house, 2 cars, some savings, retirement accounts. I kept the house and the Mustang. She took her Honda and half the savings. We'd agreed to split the retirement accounts, though there wasn't much to split. No spousal support was awarded, partly because of the documented infidelity, and partly because we'd both been working throughout the marriage. Rebecca had been right. The affair had worked in my favor financially, though the amounts involved were modest enough that it didn't matter much. When it was over, Lana's attorney gathered her papers and left quickly. Lana lingered for a moment, looking like she wanted to say something. "Take care of yourself, Hale," she said finally. "You too." It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I'd sometimes imagined, just two people who'd once loved each other, signing papers in a sterile conference room, ending what they'd built together. Outside the building, I called Maddie. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Empty, relieved, sad. All of it at once." "That's normal. You're grieving the end of a major chapter of your life." "I know. It just feels strange. Like I should feel more something. Anger, satisfaction, regret. Instead, I just feel tired." "You've been fighting this battle for months. It makes sense that you'd be exhausted." She was right. The past 4 months had been a marathon of legal proceedings, document production, and emotional turmoil. Now that it was over, I felt deflated rather than victorious. "What's next?" Maddie asked. "I don't know. I've been so focused on getting through the divorce that I haven't thought much about what comes after." "Maybe that's okay. Maybe you need some time to figure out who you are as a single person again." That afternoon, I drove through Cedar Falls, looking at my hometown with new eyes. The community college where I worked, the neighborhoods where Lana and I had lived, the restaurants where we'd eaten dinner, the movie theater where we'd gone on dates. Everything was connected to memories I wasn't sure I wanted to keep. I'd been thinking about Patricia Hale's comment about needing a complete break from the past. Maybe she was right. Maybe staying in Cedar Falls meant staying stuck in old patterns, old hurts, old versions of myself. That evening, I started researching job opportunities in other cities. My IT skills were transferable, and community colleges everywhere needed technical support staff. I could go anywhere: Denver, Portland, Austin, Charlotte, places where nobody knew about the Morrison Associates scandal or the cucumber affair or the messy divorce that had followed. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. 2 weeks later, I got an unexpected phone call from Janice Kellerman at Morrison Associates. "I wanted to update you on some developments," she said. "We've completed our internal investigation into Victor Hale's conduct." "I thought that was finished months ago when you fired him." "The termination was just the beginning. We've been conducting a comprehensive review of his entire tenure with the firm. We found evidence of multiple policy violations, inappropriate relationships, and potential harassment." "How many others were there?" 4 women over 6 years. 2 left the company, 1 transferred departments, and 1 filed a complaint that was mishandled by Victor's supervisor at the time. "What happened to the supervisor?" "He's no longer with the firm either. We've implemented new policies and training programs to prevent this kind of situation in the future." "What about the women who were affected?" "We've reached settlements with all of them. Financial compensation, positive references, assistance finding new positions. We take these matters very seriously." It was good to know that Morrison and Associates was trying to make things right, but it couldn't undo the damage Victor had caused over the years. How many marriages had he damaged? How many careers had he derailed? "There's something else," Janice said. "We've been contacted by investigators from 2 other firms where Victor worked previously. Similar patterns of behavior, similar complaints that were never properly addressed." "So this goes back further than 6 years?" "Much further. Victor Hale appears to have been engaging in this behavior for most of his career. Your complaint was the first one that couldn't be buried or dismissed." After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Victor's pattern of behavior was finally being exposed, and other victims were getting justice, but it had taken the destruction of my marriage to make it happen. I wondered if Lana knew about the other women, if she understood that she'd been part of a pattern rather than a special relationship. Probably not. Victor had likely told her the same lies he'd told the others, that she was different, that their connection was unique, that their relationship was worth the risks. That weekend, I made a decision that had been building for weeks. I called a real estate agent and put my house on the market. Then I submitted applications for IT positions in 3 different cities: Denver, Portland, and Austin. All of them were places I'd never lived, where I could start over without the weight of history. The house sold faster than I'd expected. Apparently there was demand for modest homes in quiet neighborhoods. The buyers were a young couple with a baby on the way, full of excitement about their first home purchase. They reminded me of Lana and me 8 years ago, when we'd bought the place and thought we were building something permanent. I hoped they'd have better luck than we had. 3 weeks later, I got a job offer from Austin Community College. The position was similar to what I'd been doing in Cedar Falls, but with better pay and opportunities for advancement. More importantly, it was 900 miles away from everything that had happened. My last day of work in Cedar Falls was a Friday in early April. My colleagues threw a small goodbye party in the break room, cake, coffee, and well wishes for my new adventure. Most of them knew about my divorce, though few knew the details. They were kind enough not to ask too many questions. Dave, my supervisor, pulled me aside before I left. "You sure about this move?" he asked. "Austin's a big change from Cedar Falls." "I'm sure. I need a fresh start." "Well, you've got my recommendation if you ever want to come back. You're a good employee and a good person. Don't let whatever happened here make you think otherwise." It was a generous thing to say, and I appreciated it more than he probably knew. That evening, I had dinner with Maddie at O'Malley's. The bar was busy for a Friday night. Couples on dates, friends celebrating the end of the work week, regulars settling in for long conversations over multiple drinks. "I'm going to miss you," Maddie said. "It won't be the same without my big brother around to worry about." "You'll be fine. You've got your own life to live." "What about you? Are you excited about Austin?" "Nervous mostly, but good nervous. Like I'm finally moving forward instead of just surviving." "That's healthy. You've been in survival mode for months." We talked about practical things, my new job, finding an apartment, exploring a new city. But underneath the logistics, we were both thinking about the bigger picture. I was leaving behind everything familiar to start over at 38 years old. "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" Maddie asked. "I don't know. Maybe someday, but not for a long time. I need to figure out who I am as a single person before I can think about being part of a couple again." "That's probably smart. Take time to heal, to learn from what happened." "What did I learn? That people lie? That marriage is fragile? That cucumbers can destroy your life?" Maddie laughed. "Maybe you learned that you're stronger than you thought, that you can handle crisis and come out the other side, that you don't have to accept betrayal just because it comes from someone you love." She was right, though I hadn't thought about it that way. 6 months ago, I'd been a passive husband who assumed his marriage was solid. Now I was someone who'd fought for himself, documented injustice, and demanded accountability. I'd discovered reserves of strength and determination I hadn't known I possessed. "Maybe you're right," I said. "Maybe I did learn something valuable." On Saturday morning, I loaded the last of my belongings into a rented truck. The house looked strange, empty of everything that had made it home. New owners would move in next week and fill it with their own furniture, their own memories, their own hopes for the future. I drove through Cedar Falls one last time, past the community college, past Morrison Associates, past the Riverside Hotel where Lana and Victor had conducted their affair. It was a tour of a chapter of my life that was ending, not just the marriage, but everything connected to it. At the city limits, I pulled over and called Patricia Hale. We'd stayed in touch occasionally since our divorces were finalized. "I'm leaving town today," I told her. "Moving to Austin." "Good for you. That takes courage." "How are you doing?" "Better than expected. I started art history classes last month, and I'm planning a trip to Europe this summer. Turns out there's life after a failed marriage." "Any regrets?" "About the divorce? None. About the marriage? Only that it lasted as long as it did. I should have seen the signs earlier." "We both should have. But maybe we needed to go through this to become who we're supposed to be." "Maybe so. Take care of yourself, Hale, and keep in touch. I'd like to hear how Austin treats you." The drive to Austin took 14 hours, with stops for gas, food, and rest. I listened to music, audiobooks, and long stretches of silence. Somewhere around Dallas, I realized I felt lighter than I had in months, not just physically, but emotionally. Like I was shedding weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Austin was hot, humid, and full of energy. The community college was larger than the one I'd left, with more resources and opportunities. My new colleagues were welcoming, and my apartment was small but comfortable. Everything was different, which was exactly what I'd wanted. 3 months later, I was settling into my new routine when I got an unexpected email. The sender was someone named Jennifer Walsh, and the subject line read, "Morrison and Associates Investigation." "Mr. Trenwick," the email began, "I'm an investigative journalist working on a story about workplace harassment and corporate cover-ups. Your case involving Victor Hale has been mentioned in several interviews. Would you be willing to speak with me about your experience?" I stared at the email for a long time before responding. Part of me wanted to leave the past behind, to focus on building my new life in Austin. But another part of me thought about the other women Victor had targeted and the pattern of behavior that had been enabled for years. I wrote back, "I'd be willing to discuss this. When would be convenient?" The article was published 6 months later in a regional business magazine. It was a comprehensive investigation into Morrison and Associates' handling of harassment complaints, with Victor Hale as the central figure. The piece included interviews with 4 of his victims, details about the firm's inadequate policies, and criticism of the corporate culture that had allowed the behavior to continue. My story was just one part of a larger narrative about power, abuse, and accountability in professional settings. But it felt good to see it in print, to know that the truth was being told and that other people might be protected because of it. The article had consequences. Morrison Associates faced several lawsuits and eventually settled with all of Victor's victims. The firm implemented new policies and hired an outside consultant to review their workplace culture. 2 senior partners resigned, and the company's reputation in Cedar Falls was permanently damaged. Victor himself seemed to disappear after the article was published. I heard through Maddie that he'd left Ohio entirely, though nobody knew where he'd gone. His marriage to Patricia had been finalized, and he'd lost most of his assets in the divorce settlement. Lana reached out to me once after the article appeared. A brief email saying she was sorry for everything that had happened and hoped I was doing well in Austin. I wrote back wishing her luck and meaning it. Whatever anger I'd felt toward her had faded into something more like sadness for what we'd lost. A year after moving to Austin, I was promoted to senior IT coordinator at the community college. I'd made friends, explored the city, and started dating occasionally. Nothing serious, but a sign that I was ready to open myself up to new possibilities. I still thought about the cucumber sometimes, not with anger or bitterness, but with a kind of dark amusement. Such a ridiculous thing to destroy a marriage. A vegetable and a note delivered by a man who thought he was clever. But maybe that was fitting. Maybe betrayal always started with something small and stupid, something that seemed insignificant until it revealed the rot underneath. The important thing was what came after. The choice to fight or surrender, to demand accountability or accept betrayal, to rebuild or remain broken. I'd chosen to fight, to rebuild, to start over. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. On a warm evening in October, exactly 2 years after that package had arrived at my front door in Cedar Falls, I was sitting on my apartment balcony in Austin, watching the sunset and thinking about the future. My phone buzzed with a text from Maddie. Saw the most ridiculous thing at the grocery store today. A cucumber display with a sign that said, "Hope this reminds you of me." Made me think of you and laugh. I laughed too, not because it was funny, though it was in a twisted way, but because I could laugh about it now. The pain had faded enough that I could see the absurdity of it all, the ridiculous chain of events that had led from a vegetable delivery to a new life in a new city. I typed back, "Thanks for the reminder, but I prefer my vegetables and salads these days." Then I put my phone away and watched the sun disappear behind the Austin skyline, thinking about second chances and fresh starts and the strange ways that endings could become beginnings. The cucumber affair was over. My new life was just getting started.